But other countries are also facing similar challenges, and their workers too. So I think while we look at our own problems to see them in perspective, we should look at other countries, learn from them, and see what lessons we can draw. The Sec Gen just now mentioned a few briefly. I'll just take you through some of them again, because I think the lessons are worth thinking about. In Europe, many countries are in trouble. Why? Because welfareism has failed. The idea that the government will provide everything has not worked. Workers have too little incentive to make the effort. Their jobs are protected, which means very hard to discipline the workers, very hard to let the workers go when conditions change, very hard to drop the workers when they are not putting in the effort. So the employers say, well, it was so hard to let the workers go, I better be very careful before I take the workers on. So the employers are reluctant to hire, fewer jobs are created. The population is aging. Their pensions are paid by the state. It's a very heavy burden on the state, becoming unaffordable. You take just one example. In Italy, the amount which the Italian government spends on pensions in 1 year is almost equal in terms of percentage GDP to the amount which the Singapore government spends in the budget every year for everything: education, healthcare, defense, housing, transport, all added together. Percentage GDP about 15% equals 15% of GDP on pensions in Italy. So you can't afford this. The countries have too much debt. Investors no longer willing to lend them the money, and so they are in a crisis. The stagnation is going to last. Unemployment is well above 10%. For young people, much worse. If you take Spain, 24% unemployment. 1/4 of the adults are not working. And among the youth, 52% are not working. More than half. So you can imagine somebody who has no work, leaving school, and for 10 years he has no work. By the time he's 30, how does he start finding a job, looking for a job, learning how to be in a job, and starting his working career? So it's a crisis. People are very upset with the world, upset with the government. So many governments have fallen. All along the southern Europe, they've changed governments. Portugal, Spain, Italy, Greece, all gone. Holland, recently, coalition collapsed. Romania, as I was writing this speech, I had to add into the list because the government fell down. France, last weekend, first round of elections, Mr. Sarkozy is trailing. Second round coming next weekend, he may lose. So, the continent is in crisis. In America, situation is not so bad, but many concerns over social safety nets too. Healthcare, which we worry about, they worry about. Extremely expensive to the individual who must pay the insurance, expensive to the state who must pay out of the federal budget for Medicaid and Medicare. The social security system, which is pensions, also bankrupt. But they can't reform it. Politically it's impossible. So the budget is in chronic deficit, and they have no money left to invest in education, in infrastructure, in growth, in their people. If we look at the emerging economies, China, India, Vietnam, still growing, creating jobs, but they are not without their own worries and headaches. Like in China, worrying about income inequality, especially between the coastal cities, which are prosperous, and the inland areas, which are not doing so well. They are worried about economic restructuring because they know every year they have to do better, but they can't keep on doing better without changing the way the economy works. And they are also worried about an aging population and a shrinking workforce because not enough babies. And they worry that they may grow old before they grow rich. So, moral is, every country has its own problems. Many of these problems are similar to us. is inevitable because of globalization, because of technological progress affecting all of the world. We are not in an ideal position, certainly not perfect, but I think we should see our progress and our problems in perspective. On balance, I think we are in good shape to tackle the problems, but we must get our strategies right.